Hi, Professor. This is Christopher Garcia, just going over my presentation of Lab 3, your first hack part 2. And in this assignment, we're supposed to create a video on going over the presentation on how we gained access to our system and going over some mitigation techniques. And I'm going to do that for our C-suite team. And so as we go to the next slide, what we're going to be looking at is vulnerabilities and how they're exploited. We talk about vulnerabilities in our actual lab that we're going to go over with our C-suite team here, and some hack examples. So those vulnerabilities are areas in your security system that aren't necessarily up to date, or something new pops up where they found a new example on how to get through that. Exploits or those methods that the hacker uses to get into them and exploit them. And then here's our hack example from our lab. In this instance, these are all free softwares that I used to hack into our key optics machine using our Linux machine. Here we used Metasploit, and what this does was we put in an IP and used the tool to identify what system the port 80 was using. We identified what operating system they were using, and that was Samba 2.2.1a. And then as we get into that, we go into the next image right here, and it kind of shows how simple this could be, that this can all be searched up online. Obviously, this is a very simple hack, but having some experience can be detrimental to our company and our organization. So what is here is we saved a file that's a code file that exploits into a vulnerability in the system. We're able to use to our machine that's on the same network as another machine to force entry using a weakness in Samba 2.21a. And so as we see that, we get into the brute force. We see that down here, and seeing what that looks like to move into that using the tools that we have with us. And so we move on to the next slide. Here what it shows us is that I gained access to the system, and then once I gained access, I was able to find the users. I was able to create a user, Garcia, at the bottom, and then once I was able to do that, I was actually able to give root access to Garcia, the user, which we go over here. We see that this is our Key Optics 1 machine, and here we see Garcia login, password went in, then we went UID, which is 503, 503, 503, and that's the user for that for this machine, which is added to the group of users there. And so as we can see, that's very simple to get into a system. Here's some mitigation strategies to secure our system that have been practiced and given opportunity. And so what we look at here is the principle of least privilege, making sure that we're not giving out privilege to those who don't need it. And so that kind of hardens our system, and making sure that we're staying advanced and not giving out too much that we can't handle, so that hackers don't take advantage of that. So strong authentication systems include multi-factor systems, updating systems, and all that. And so what you're going to see is two-step, whether that's through a third-party app that has secure systems, using their phone or codes to ensure that the actual users that are getting in are the ones that we need them. That includes in the system hardware, and then segmenting networks so that if people do get in, we're able to isolate them and they don't have free range across everything. As we look at monitoring and logging, that's going to be making sure that we're on top of our logging and suspicious activity, which is going to include automated activities to block and stop those hacks from happening, so that we're not putting ourselves in situations where something simple that can be done turns out to be something extremely costly in the long run. And as we look at our common cyber threats, we're going to go over those details, and what we're going to be looking for is the taxonomy of the attack, and that's going to be providing the definition, the summary, and the category that the attack falls in for family. So as we look at the buffer overflow, we're going to look at the exploitation and why is it important to even know about this. So what users would do is send more data than our system can maintain, and so that either causes the system to crash or causes them to gain access in another area. The same thing with privilege escalation, access control attacks. That's where it's going to be categorized, and then we're going to be looking at they're going to be gaining access through flaws. Once they gain that access, they're going to try and move up, and that's a lot like what we did in our example, where I was able to get in. Once I got in, I was able to move up to root access, which means I can edit files in computer systems and exploit those and steal data, which can be very costly in the long run. What we're looking at next is rootkits, malicious software, software that remains hidden in the system, and it can cause long-term issues and have long-term access. So they can steal data, constantly be stealing data, which will also damage our reputation as an organization. So as we're looking into Trojan software or Trojan threat, we're going to be looking at malicious software that looks legitimate but is malicious, and it tricks users into stealing data. And so that's a lot to go with as far as social engineering, tricking users to think that this is a legitimate website, a legitimate email of some sort. And so that's what we're kind of looking into. And as we continue through our last couple cyber threats, what we're going to be looking at is backdoor. That's a persistent threat that constantly tries to sidestep authentication procedures, which would be like, having to log in and use your password, or having to log in and, access, multi authentication app or something, but being able to bypass that and gain access to the system to grab data or steal data. And so then the next cyber threat we're being looking at is virus, the type of malware. It's a program that attaches to files and manipulates them, as you may say, utilizing this to infect programs and steal data. Another one is return-oriented programming. It's code injection. It uses small executable code known as gadgets to perform malicious activity. And so a lot of those code is snippets of what the system may already know, and so that it may seem like it might be trustworthy and gain access to the system or do different manners. And so a common social engineering attack is a human vulnerability, probably one of the most hardest and difficult to control because it's outside of our control, and that's either being manipulated by a hacker in the physical realm, as far as either plugging something into your computer that you might have found on the ground to see what's in it, sending an email through social engineering attacks to give up your confidential information to get into systems, ruin a lot of lives as far as stealing identity, or even getting into our business as a threat. And so this would include phishing, social phishing, which is spear phishing, email phishing, and so and nowadays even text phishing. And so that's something that you want to remain attentive to and ensure that we're staying on top. And that's something these are some things that we want to be aware of, because these in the past 30 days are things that are constantly being used against our organization to make sure we're under attack. And so being able to mitigate our security systems with mitigation techniques includes hardening our system and being able to protect ourselves from real world threats and very malicious activity. And so that's what we want to be attentive to. We want to make sure that we're putting the right amount of training and awareness in that, and ensure that we're doing our best to protect our business and our entity. Thank you.